Do you feel like you're in a dating purgatory? Navigating the dating landscape as a middle aged man in today's society can feel like decoding a mystery in a whole new language. Join me and highly sought after dating coach Jonathan Aslay as we uncover the truths, challenges, and triumphs of modern dating for men who've never settled down or find themselves newly single again. From overcoming insecurities to decoding today's norms, this episode promises insights that every man needs to thrive in the dating world in 2025 or later. Get ready to redefine your approach and discover what it takes to be successful in today's dating scene. Jonathan, I was reading one of your posts the other day that you shared, and it said 71% of single women over the age of 40 say they're not even interested in dating, which kind of blew my mind. And I would think that would be a huge issue for men, middle-aged men who are looking to date. But more importantly, in your experience as a dating coach, what is the biggest problem facing middle-aged men in the dating scene right now?
Oh my God. We could do a whole episode on that for the next 5 hours. What I think men are faced with, and I'm gonna be a little bit more introspective here. I think one of the challenges most men have is they don't really know what they want. And I'm talking about midlife men, but I need to explain why that is when we're in our 20s and 30s, we have this blueprint that's go to college, get a job, meet someone, get married, buy a house, start a family. And many men followed that blueprint. But like myself and so many others, roughly about 75% of singles over 45 years old are divorced. And because of that, not only is there a dismantling of the tapestry of their life through a divorce, but there's no real concrete understanding of what's the purpose of a relationship going forward outside of making babies and raising a family. There's no real, most men don't have a real concrete structure other than they know they want companionship, they want connection, they want physical intimacy, but what that structure looks like, most men are clueless outside of what their own needs are. So I think it starts without an understanding of what's the purpose of a relationship. And because of that, a lot of men are running around with their heads cut off like a chicken. And that's one of the reasons why women are frustrated from their vantage point.
Fair enough. Now, Jonathan has some incredible insights he's going to share with us today on the show. We're going to jump to our sponsor, and we'll be right back with dating coach Jonathan Aslay and dating for middle-aged men. Right now, My Pillow is having two sales in one. The first is a closeout sale on the Percal bed sheets, any size, any color, just $25. That's right. You can even get queens, kings, split kings, and California kings, any size, any color, just $25. 11 colors to choose from. When they're gone, guys. And these are great sheets. We just ordered a couple more ourselves. The second sale is their new energy drink called Rev 7, a premium energy drink that's actually good for you. It tastes great and gives you energy all day long. Plus, it has no sugar, no caffeine. So you don't have to experience the jitters or the crashes we've all been through with other energy drinks. What makes Rev 7 so special is that powder is powered with cognizin, however you pronounce that, because I can't pronounce it, a premium neurotropic that helps fuel your mind, and Go BHB, which is a primary ketone in your body that provides the most efficient and cleanest fuel ever. My Pillow is so confident you're going to love Red 7 that for a limited time, you can try their introductory 3-pack absolutely free. That's right, guys, you heard it, absolutely free. These amazing offers won't last long, so now you can just go to mypillow.com, use promo code THRIVE, or call 800-794-5834. That's 800-794-5834. I love Rev 7, guys, and I've got a review coming out very soon for it, but for a limited time only, you can try their 3-pack, get all three flavors absolutely free. Check it out. Now, back to our episode. Welcome to the Driven Thrive broadcast, purpose, growth, and lasting impact for men. I'm your host, Brent Allen, and we help men go from living to thriving, purpose-filled, intentional lives. My guest today is dating coach Jonathan Aslay. I'm probably saying that wrong, but Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much, Brent. I'm happy to be here.
Now, Jonathan, I like to start really simple. So how's your trivia skills?
How's my trivia skills? It
Yeah.
depends. I'm good at movie, but other stuff I could be weak.
Oh, I go for the most random nonsense I can find. So
Okay.
here's the trivia question of the show. What is the collective name for a group of unicorns? Is it A, a sparkle, B, a spell, C, a blessing, or D, a glitter?
I'm going to go with D.
All right, guys, you know the routine. Don't cheat. Don't look ahead. Make your guess. We'll come back to that later because no one actually cares. Now, to start off, who in your own words is Jonathan Aslay? And am I saying that right?
No, you said it perfectly. So thank you so much. Who am I from an existential point, or I mean, from the way I'm a soul here having a human experience. I'm a spirit having a human experience.
Okay. Jonathan, what do you do for a living?
So professionally, I'm a dating and relationship coach. Now, predominantly helping women understand men, mostly in midlife, which I say midlife is after baby making years and before retirement. But if I really got even more granular here, I recognize that dating and relationships trigger the number one emotional health issue most human beings are faced with. That is, I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I'm not likable. And dating and relationships trigger this stuff like nobody's business. So really, I'm more of an empowerment coach, encouraging people to work on themselves from a personal development, self-help, spiritual therapy perspective so they can navigate the dating marketplace with a lot more confidence.
It's actually really interesting to me because when I was getting ready for the show, I started going through your website and looking at some of your YouTube videos and stuff. It's like, oh my goodness, like you have made a living. The whole thing that got me started in what I do is I was helping translate women I know's boyfriends and husbands for them. Like I'd listen to them around my dinner table complaining about, oh, he did this or he did that. It's like, do you understand what he's actually saying though? Do you know what that actually means? And I was looking through your videos. I was like, oh, dude, okay, you totally took that route, and there is a desperate need. So I'm going to be recommending your website to some ladies I know to help them understand their men because I don't want to answer those questions anymore. But Jonathan, I think we're gonna have. I love having dating coaches on
Okay.
because this is not an area, right? I've been married for 24 years. We just celebrated our
Okay.
anniversary,
Congratulations.
and I've been with my wife. Thank you for 27 years, and I don't like. I have friends and I have audience and listeners that are dating, and is like I can't really help them. So I think you're going to help us a lot today. Now, guys, we're going to get to know Jonathan just a little bit, see what makes him tick, and then we're going to dive into middle-aged men dating and what that looks like in a whole nother world. Because Jonathan's going to be able to help you a whole lot more than I can. Jonathan, are you ready for the speed round of nonsensical questions?
Yeah, but I have one real quick question to ask. Am I allowed to use expletives in any part of our conversation?
Yes.
Okay. And just so you know, while I do work with women, men now reach out to me more than ever before. So I just wanted to emphasize I didn't say that earlier. So
No worries. I already figured that out. That's why we're here today. So we're
okay, good, good, good.
Jonathan, before we actually get serious, what is something that everybody should know about you before we dig in today?
What is it they should know? You know what? I can't stand condiments. I hate ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, and relish. They gross me out like nobody's business. When I'm at a coffee shop and it's at the table, I ask the waiter or waitress to please remove it. Should you know that about me? I don't know, but I'm telling you something weird about me.
You know what? That makes you absolutely human. It's
Yeah.
everybody has those interesting things, right? Like I found out the hard way I can't eat rye bread and I can't eat peas either. Who knew? Right? We all have those interesting little quirks about us that make us us and shape
Yeah.
kind of how we get through life. Now, guys, we've just been having a little bit of fun getting to know who Jonathan is, what makes him tick as a dude. And in the next part of the show, we're going to start diving into modern dating for middle aged men. Now, Jonathan, I did not write out a whole lot of questions on my side just because I want to have an open discussion because I think there's so
Sure.
much that you can help my audience with this. Um, Now, I know guys in this situation, and of course, I've done some research, And there are a lot of fears for men who are either in that age range and haven't been married, or men who are newly divorced or are recently divorced, getting into the dating game again.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a scary scene. I've talked to a couple other dating coaches in the last couple of years. Like, quite honestly, like I'm so grateful my wife and I continue to make our marriage work this time, because I would be absolutely lost. I'm a Gen X. I don't know that I could handle dating. I wasn't really good at it when I was younger anyway. And so let's start at just the top end. What does the dating scene look like in 2025 for a middle-aged guy?
Well, let's put it for both men and women, because I think it's important to recognize that our current method of getting to know people is predominantly fueled by online dating. Online dating represents, I believe, over 65% of new couples that are generated these days happen through some sort of online connection. And that doesn't always have to be a dating site or app, that could include social media as well. So, number one, that pure fact is that we oftentimes meet total strangers. And when we meet a stranger and we know nothing about them, we have to spend time to get a sense of who this person is. And yet, historically, we have been driven by entertainment, romance, and physical connection as the pathway to love. In other words, it's driven through that vehicle, if you will. But what's missing is we almost have this need for an accelerated learning curve without actually getting to know another human being to really know, do I trust this person? Do I actually really like this person? And, we men are biologically driven. We're driven sexually. We are fueled by our lower chakra, our penis, more than we are our heart or practicality. So from the male point of view, and by the way, Brent, I could sit here and give you a whole conversation of why I think the red pill community is wrong and the MGTOW community is wrong. And I could get into a lot of things that, because they point the finger at women as being the problem. And women are not the problem. Men are not the problem. Human beings are the problem. It's a man and it's a human issue. Um, and I could go down so many rabbit holes. So direct me, and I'll fire away.
Well, and I love the fact that we're laying equal blame here. That's
Yeah,
what all those movements really tend to hack me off. I Being in the men's space, I see a lot of the red pill community, the MGTOW community, and the MGTOW community just blows my mind. Like, it's like, okay,
yeah,
you guys are just dumb. I'm sorry. They are. This whole "we don't need women" is as dumb as women saying we don't need men, right? We're There's a reason that every species is paired, male and female.
yeah.
We both bring something to the table. So I will gladly go along with, it's equally, shared responsibility in the situation we're in.
Yeah,
Um, I know, without diving into the extremists, and that's
yeah.
one of the things I try and shy away from, is the extreme
Good.
on either
Fair
side
enough.
of an argument, because that's just nonsensical anyways. You never find the answer there. Is, there are men who are trying to navigate, and like I said, I threw out that statistic that you shared on your Facebook. Seems to be less women over the age of 40 who are actively searching for a relationship anymore. And so you've got guys who are in that age group who, there's a disproportionate amount of women who are looking to connect. And so it's presenting this really interesting
Well,
situation
I
for men.
can I jump in?
Yeah.
So the statistic, while you have to recognize that to some degree, statistics can be
Yeah.
false sense of perception. So to the extent that women don't necessarily do the searching anyway, it's usually men do the hunting. I mean, traditionally speaking, women get asked out. So part of that number could be that there are a lot of women that aren't searching, but they get asked out all the time. So we have to kind of take that into consideration to that. But what I think what that really represents, that number, is women are frustrated at men's lack of direction. And I think the part of the problem, the lack of, because again, we men tend to traditionally be driven by our libido as our entry point into a relationship. But once that occurs, a lot of men don't have direction other than it's my way or the highway. Now, the reason why I say this is we age, we become very stuck, or we get set in our ways. So women get set in their ways and men get set in their ways. And add to that, if you're divorced, if you have children, if you've got alimony and child support and visitation rights and family court and all this other stuff going on, you kind of like, I'm already overwhelmed in my life to begin with. I want someone to just come in and be an easy adjunct to that, because men have not been trained to actually work on a relationship, particularly from an emotional level. I mean, we know statistically that women initiate 80% of the divorces. Well, a big chunk of that is men are either stoic when it comes to their emotions, or they're non existent when it comes to the real intimacy in a relationship. And again, we men traditionally, you're a Gen Xer, I'm a boomer. We've been conditioned that our role is the provider protector. Okay. We women don't need men to pay their bills. I mean, the midlife folks, okay, for the most part, they can support themselves. So what are you going to bring to the table if that's not what you're bringing to the table? You better start bringing some heart to the table. um, and again, I know I sound a little combative towards the guys, and believe me, I equally bash women on my podcast and my channel as I do men. Okay, so just so for the guys watching, I know right at this moment I'm sharing this because a lot of you guys don't have direction, but you don't know what that is because nobody teaches us what that looks like in midlife.
It's an incredibly fair observation. One of the things I've frequently discussed on my show is the fact that as the role of men has evolved, we have not actually effectively redefined that, right? Men are still being taught the same imperative of our roles in a relationship that we have for thousands of years,
Yeah.
right? I still hear it today with like younger, like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, even. Men are provide, protect, preside, right? Procreate, the four P's. That's what they're good for.
Yeah.
And we live in a time when that's not the case necessarily. God forbid there are some areas that hopefully you have somebody to help protect you just because it's safer in pairs in our society. But most of us aren't, running from wild animals or having that kind of
Yeah.
power. And so many women are doing well in their professional lives, especially at that point in their life. And so, yeah, we've conditioned men all, and we're still conditioning men. This is your role. This is what you bring to it. And no one is sharing. No, there's more. It's changed. We've moved past that.
So I want to say something to this, and to this extent that we men are such great protectors. The reality is, by the way, I'm 6'2". I
Mhm.
weigh about 205 pounds, and I couldn't fight my way out of a paper bag. Okay, the last time I got in fight was third grade. Okay, I mean my capacity to physically protect someone is I'm a deer in the headlights. And if a mugger came up, we're fucked. Okay, the reality is we physically have not. Most men outside of law enforcement and military and a few other things really don't know how to fight. Okay, let's be real. So that idea of protecting now, does that mean we could pay attention to hazards in the road and things like that? Absolutely. But from that traditional sense, as you said, thousands of years, it has literally been fight to the death.
Mhm.
Now it's fight on your games, your PlayStation to death. And I'm just kidding. And you get to reset when you die in there, which you don't get to do in real life. So the idea, this is why protection is more, really has to be from an emotional level. Are you looking out for this other person's best interest, or are you just self-servant in your own interest? And sadly, at least here in the United States, Brent, we are a very myopic, self-serving, men and women alike. What needs can I get met, not what needs can I meet for the other person?
I had a conversation with another marriage therapist who she talked to me about this idea of emotional safety, and like
Yeah.
I was just sitting there listening to her. I'm like, I don't even know that I do this well. This
You
was not
probably
something
don't.
I thought, right? And
No.
now I actively my whole life have pursued trying to be a better husband, right? So I still read books on it. I still go to like marriage enrichment seminars with my wife. We do this regularly together because we're constantly trying to work on it. And I tend to put more into that than a lot of guys do. And I still hear that idea of emotional safety. I'm like, what? That's a thing? That it barely computes for me. I'm a as you
Well,
say, rigid in my like I don't need other people's. I've never needed uh, other people's approvals or any kind of like that or encouragement. I've always been ridiculously confident in myself. So people who are like, "Oh, you're good at," I don't care, right?
yeah, but
But
you've already shared with us, you go out and you buy books, you are going to workshops with your wife, you're doing things to improve your relationship. You're not saying, I don't need it. Because,
mhm,
like a lot of guys, I don't need any help. I'm doing fine. And believe me, you'll be divorced in a few years, number one. But number two, you're actively working on your relationship. And I suspect because you see your relationship as a separate entity and she's not someone who's underneath you, she's side by side with you. And it's again that perception that you walk in with is am I looking for a partner or if I'm looking for and again, if we focus on what the red pill is talking about, they're looking for servants and they somehow suppose that that's going to make people happier if we go back to a traditional way. Believe me, women 100 years ago were miserable with their husbands, okay? They were taken care of, basic needs were met, but on an emotional level, they were miserable. And I don't care, we could pull out the movie like It's a Wonderful Life or Ozzie and Harriet and that sort of thing. But
mm.
that was just like the fantasy roles. Um, so, I think men, here's the hard part for a lot of men, I suspect, watching this is that it is sad that on some level women they do select oftentimes from a dating app perspective the cream of the crop, okay? I mean, because here's the thing: when you're 50 years old, you're dating with 20-year-old eyes. Every 50-year-old man wants a 20-year-old supermodel, and every woman wants their Prince Charming. In other words, they're still dating with their 20-year-old eyes. And a lot of men, as we age, we start to lose our hair, we gain a little bit belly, and women get wrinkles and saggy. I won't say, their breasts start to sag unless they get augmented. Um, so they do feel a bit marginalized. I think men feel marginalized, but women feel marginalized as well because we weren't designed to swipe to meet our partner. That's not the way we were designed. And so dating apps in particular in the last 7 to 8 years, Brent, has marginalized people, and men are doing it and women are doing it. It's just men will swipe way more often because our standards for having sex is rather low. Our standard to commit is rather high, but our standard to have sex is rather low.
It's interesting because as
You
this
agree?
I think so.
Okay.
As it's changed and evolved, one of the things I benefited from is my wife had a different idea of dating than I did. She was
Okay.
raised with the idea of courting. So my wife and I lived on the opposite sides of the country when we were dating. We weren't
Okay.
dating. We had a long distance relationship over the phone for 3 years.
Okay.
Uh, so
How
by the
did
time
you meet?
she was I came up to spend part of the summer with my brother when I was 17
Okay.
and went to the church senior high retreat with he helped with the youth group,
Okay.
and she was one of the teens in the youth group at his church. She also would help my sister-in-law when my brother was out at sea sometimes because he was in the Navy. And
Okay.
so he was essentially my niece's nanny, actually, is how I met.
Okay. Okay.
Um, but we met that way, and the conversation started there and just kind of continued as friends and evolved to more over several years. So by the time we actually got married, we had been talking and nothing but talking for 3 years,
Mm.
which I think has given us an edge on that, right? Our relationship wasn't founded in the physical, it was founded in conversational and that intellectual knowledge of each other, spending time
Yeah.
intellectually together. But we've moved away, right, with this whole swiping thing in the modern dating scene. Less people are going to church. Used to find somebody, to find a real relationship, right? You went to somewhere and it was like me and my wife. You found them at the church or at
Yeah.
some kind of community, and we moved as a society away from those communal areas as much. So what are the other options at this point?
Well, it used to be, if you go back, I believe 50 years ago, and it's an interesting graph when you see, back 50 years ago, you oftentimes met in the town you lived in the school you went to, both,
Mhm.
high school and or college, in your professional environment. Church was one of the number one places. In fact, when you added up all the places people met, it was, equally divided amongst what I just shared. Now, all of those are less than 5% collectively, and online dating represents 65%. So, not collectively, but, I mean, there's a few more in there as well. What was interesting about the way we selected up until about 100 years ago, give or take. I mean, these things started to really shift in the last 50 years. Is throughout history, we mated within our own tribe. In other words, you were, I mean, well, let's go back 1,000 years ago. If you were the or not 1,000, but if I think of a Native American, if you were Apache, you married an Apache. If you imagine, a Navajo, it was like within that tribe. um, you typically shared the same values, you typically shared the same culture, the same language, everything was the same, so the relationship already had a solid commonality built in. Here we live in a melting pot of different values, different ethnicities, different cultures, different perceptions, different socioeconomic. So we're not as aligned as we used to be, which puts a lot more pressure on the emotional aspect of the relationship because those other things aren't there to hold the stability of it. You met so oh, and as I said earlier, with online dating, you're meeting strangers. At least in the case of your wife, you had no degrees of separation. It was like you guys were technically 1 degree of separation, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, and there was already built-in familiarity. So in our current environment, it's difficult because if we don't know you, how can we trust you? And how can we trust that you have my best interest at heart? Well, we call it dating and we call it courting. Um, by the way, you know why it's called dating?
Hmm.
Because the word dating was replaced. The original concept in the dictionary is holy fucking shit. Trying to figure out another human being is insane. So they said, well, let's just make up a short word for it and we call it dating. That's a Jonathanism, by the way. The idea with courting is a man, I mean, traditionally speaking, is he knew he wanted this person as a wife. So he did all the things to prove himself because he had that destination. I can't court someone I don't know. I mean, I meet a woman, I'm attracted to her. I'm like, yeah, I want to have sex with her, but I don't know if I want to be fully committed and support her and be all in with this person. So to court a person you don't know, I don't believe is a healthy way to approach it either. We have to build some sort of foundation. And the problem is we get physically intimate too soon and we bond with a person, and yet, physical intimacy for those of us in midlife is part of our decision making process too. So we're in a juxtaposition, we're in a catch 22 here. Um, because I'll tell you what, folks in midlife, the one thing they don't want to compromise is good sex, especially many people who went without sex for so long in their marriages. They're like, well, I don't want to compromise on that. So I want to know that, that works well without ever building a real healthy emotional foundation with another person. I mean, these are the challenges of many.
So, how do we start to? You said rushing in is kind of become de facto in midlife dating because we have certain things we don't want to give up or we've had to go without. I've known a lot of guys in sexless marriages. So, how do we pump the brakes and at a place where we're not being connected with members of our tribe automatically, right? We already have these pseudo bonds of commonalities. How do we start to build something and trust without rushing in too fast or without getting like, I know a lot of guys who are terrified of dating at this
Yeah.
point because, you've got, thankfully it seems to be have regressed some, but you had the Me Too movement that was really strong for a while. Um, in the younger generations, we're seeing a lot of women who are very fine with the idea of, I'm going to marry you, I'm going to take half your crap and leave. Like they
Yeah.
go into relationships with that aspect in their mind already. So there are a lot of guys who are terrified of even the thought of dating somebody. How do we start to move in a healthy relationship or towards a healthy relationship and start to trust without jumping too far down first?
Yeah, and to the extent that we've been, to some degree, for those guys that are concerned about losing half of their net worth and everything, guys, a simple prenup solves that problem. You don't have to be worried about it. I mean, for the most part. And there's a very famous divorce attorney on the podcast circuit named James Sexton who works with New York high end people, and he's like, you would save a lot of grief if you got a prenup ahead of time. But so this is going to require some emotional excavation. It's going to require knowing thyself is the first thing. And what I mean by know thyself, it's knowing your negative patterns, your limiting beliefs, your negative self talk, your insecurities, and your fears. Once you begin a self examination of who you are as a person, that's a great place to start, particularly in the romantic relationship realm. You'd want to study books like Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller to understand something known as a love attachment style, to name a few. You may want to do some reading the book Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, because that teaches us how to have more compassionate communication. You may want to do some inner work outside of lifting weights at the gym, getting your manicures and doing all that other stuff so you look good on the outside, is doing emotional work on the inside. I think the next important thing, Brent, is know your motive. Like, what is your motive for dating? Are you, in other words, look at, whenever you're across the table from someone, you don't know if they're your wife or not, but do you have a solid motive that you want to be in a fully committed relationship, or do you want to just see how it goes? A see how it goes, laissez faire, cavalier way of dating will lead to disappointment. It's like I want to go from Los Angeles to New York. Well, then get a compass, get a Thomas Brother guide, get yourself Google Maps, if you want to get from point A to point B. But if you have no idea how to do that, just going, oh, look at the sun and see where it's at, then you're going to be struggling. So have a plan of where you want to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. By the way, I know every dating coach will tell you never interview someone on a date. I'm saying, fuck that shit. Interrogate people on a date. Now, you can do it in a fun way. And interrogation simply is about getting to the truth. When a detective interrogates a suspect, they are trying to get to the truth of what actually happened. So I'm saying it a bit tongue in cheek for those guys listening. I'm saying it for fun. But the idea is ask really good questions and recognize the deception of chemistry. We have all, I mean, I hope most of us have grown up to figure out that chemistry does not equal relationship success. And while it's important to maintain a level of attraction and tension and all that kind of stuff, that doesn't create relationship success. You know what creates relationship success? Being an emotional grown up, knowing how to communicate for and advocate for your needs, having healthy boundaries, and knowing how to resolve conflict without being right. That's just some of the simple form. No, that there's nothing simple about what I just said,
This
but I'm
is
simplistically giving it to you, but that's not simple. In fact, quite frankly, Brent, I will tell you, relationships are not for the faint of heart. They are not. They are complicated, riddled with emotional discords, and you have to be a ninja these days to navigate it with any sense of happiness. All right, I'm done pontificating.
Now, you know, I hope most of our listeners, a lot of guys at one point in their life had that super crazy, batshit crazy, hot, passionate relationship that was all fire and uh, no substance really.
Yeah.
And hopefully, most guys have at least gone through that once, so they're not making that mistake if they're actually looking for a more solid relationship, right? I don't know any guy who wouldn't say, "Yeah, that was fun," but like I dated a girl before my wife, and it was crazy, it was furious, and we would have ended up in horrible places if we had taken our relationship any more serious because there was a lot of passion, but it was all fast burn fire, and we were just bad for each other in the long run. It's a lot of fun, but it was a lot of like we would have ended up in prison or dead or something. It would have been it was that kind of just crazy. It's like, yeah, you're a lot of fun, but we probably are really negative for each other. And most guys get that out of their system at some point, but yeah, hopefully we're a
Well, but
little.
there's also the younger demographic right now, and I'm talking about those Gen Zs and millennials. Um, a lot of them haven't had a date in years. They haven't put themselves out there. A lot of it is their own apathy and their own lack of and their naivety to some degree.
Mhm.
Being in a relationship is not a God-given right. Please, well, first off, I don't mean from a biblical standpoint. It's not a right, okay? It's what is it? It's a privilege to some degree. But there's a significant percentage of guys listening to this that probably haven't had a date in years, if not decades. And I feel for you, and I want to say this to you guys that part of it is your own apathy. I mean, look, if you want to, by the way, coming back to online dating, if you put together some really fucking awesome looking photographs, you're going to get a shitload more swipes than holding up that fish and an out of focus, sloppy hairdo picture that you post of yourself. It's like shit, what's it? Quality in, quality out. It's like, if you're putting out mediocre, then you're going to get mediocre results. And quite frankly, and I'll say this, Brent, most humans live in a delusion. Oh, I'm not the problem. It's everybody else. No, you got to fucking look in the mirror and say, what can I do? And this isn't about getting buff and looking like Andrew Tate or anything like that. Not, and I don't think he's that good looking of a guy anyway. Uh, you know, um, but it's about curating the best version of yourself. I want you to think of it like marketing. Like, how can I market myself the best I can to at least create options? And I know a lot of guys feel like there are no options, but you're not really making that much effort either. So you got to look in the mirror.
I think
You can tell I'm opinionated, right?
no, not at all. That's never would have guessed. Yeah, I think social media becoming so broad spread has done all of us disservice, right? Because it has slanted more of used to you had to have a little more realistic expectation because you interacted, you saw people around you,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you didn't just see everybody's A moments, right? And that's what we all throw on social media is those A moments, right? The very best shiny makeup's right. I just got out of a workout. The guy is just, I just got out of a workout and I haven't eaten in the last 48 hours. I'm looking good right now, right? We set these perfect moments in our lives and we've started to filter people through looking at those A moments instead of just looking at our community and the world around us and seeing people in real time and in real life. And so we've started to think, oh no, like I know from a gym perspective, so I've been a personal trainer for years. Less than 3% of the population has visible abs.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, less than 3% of the population has
I
visible,
paint mine on.
right? And that's about as close as a lot of people are ever going to get. Um, Bodybuilders don't have visible abs 90% of the time. They
Yeah.
strip, they cut hard for a show, right? And so, but we see this on social media all the time, and we don't think about the filters, and we don't think about blood. You know, this is their perfect moment that was visible. Their abs were visible for 2 days in the last 365.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it started to skew our perception of reality in dealing with actual flawed human beings. And now we start to, I know I have a friend who he's like, I'm ugly. No girl's ever going to look at me. And he's on social media regularly. And it's like, you're looking at your ideal like dreams because that's who you're following on social media. You're either following your friends or you're following that super hot Instagram model or whatever,
Yeah.
right? You're not interacting and judging on a real time. And so you're looking at that ideal. You're not looking at reality. But he has convinced himself that there are so many good looking people that he is just ugly. And, you know, he's not Brad Pitt, but it's like, dude is really not that bad. He's got a lot to offer. He's very successful. He's a very gentle, kind. He wants to treat a woman well and devote his life to a woman. But he's also convinced that he has no hope of it at this point.
Well, certainly mindset plays a huge role in this. And what you're describing in this particular person's case is his mindset. And if you don't believe you are worthy of it or you don't think you would attract it, well, then that's what your reality is going to be. And you'll find evidence of that. I did want to point something out for the guys listening. And, because to some degree I bagged on guys a little bit. Let me just bag on women for a second. And that is, women, because they are approached, I mean, so frequently, and especially the more the attractive the woman, the more she'll be approached. Some women have created an overinflated sense of their worth. That certainly exists out there. And certainly even the woman who isn't as attractive as those Instagram models and that sort of thing, because men's barrier to sex is lower than their barrier to commitment. Okay. I mean, so it might create an overinflated sense for those women who aren't as attractive. But the real challenge, and it's coming back to what you experienced with your wife, you connected you were much younger too. So I mean, we're talking to a demographic of the 40 above for the moment, or at least that's what I'm talking to, is that, you guys had this common connection, you had this experience, you spent all this time developing, sharing your feelings with one another. And by the way, I wouldn't advocate for that, by the way. And let me explain why I want to say that. At midlife, you meet someone online. You live in Los Angeles, they live in New Jersey, for argument's sake. You start communicating. You're talking, incessant communication, Oh my God, you're so wonderful. We can't wait to meet each other. Blah 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 blah. And then you try to develop a relationship with one another, and it's you're going to have sex right away because that tension has been built up, but you haven't built any real foundation because it's artificial until you actually start doing shit together. It is through the doing shit together that we actually get to know a person's character, not over the phone. That's artificial. And God forbid it's text messaging. I've witnessed people spend years texting someone whom they've never FaceTime with, never talked on the phone, and they actually believe they have a relationship with this person. Oftentimes it's a catfish anyway. So, and it's just keeping them company. Well, you'd be better off doing it with Chat GPT because at least Chat GPT is a yes man or a yes woman. At least it'll tell you everything you want to hear. So, um, but coming back to that mindset piece, I've seen some of the ugliest guys on the planet and that's so mean, but Billy Joel wasn't that attractive. I mean, yeah, he landed Christy Brinkley. Look at Rick O'Casey. I mean, he was with Paulina Poroskova. Talk about now, mind you, he was a singer and everything like that. I mean, these guys had wealth. I get that piece, but they weren't all that attractive. Even Dan Aykroyd had Oh God, what's her name? She's my favorite. She escapes me right now. But her name was Sunny on that show with anyway. Um, the mindset that's when you have a mindset that I am worthy, I am lovable, I'm likable. When you have that mindset, and it's not about physical looks. Now, don't get me wrong, we all have a type that we're attracted to. Some of that is instinctual, biological, that sort of thing. But if we can let go of the egoic part of it and say, who can I connect with at a heart centered level? Um, you know, that's what it will be the more of an enriching life than trying to get the Instagram model. And believe me, a lot of those young girls that are doing that today, and again, we're speaking to an older demographic, but for this conversation really quickly, they are emotionally hurting on the inside. They're not necessarily all that capable of being in a relationship, kind of like the batshit crazy you were talking about. And I'm not Listen, I don't want to pigeonhole every woman who's doing that. I'm just saying some.
That's fair. So, Jonathan, let's move in a direction, okay?
Okay.
With the discussion towards how can the men right now who are listening to this start to pull themselves into a more positive spot to, you know, get themselves ready for a healthy relationship, what they can do on their side of it, and then maybe move towards, you know, some ideas to actually meet people and start to build a solid foundation if that's the direction they're going.
Yeah. I think this is a great question. And I think we're beginning to see the evolution of that. Dating apps are actually on the decline to some degree, at least. So there's such burnout and fatigue
Yeah.
that, there are people actually making effort out in the real world. It's funny that you have to say it that, or we mean organically. I think first and foremost, I'm a big proponent of everybody doing personal development, self help, spiritual work, and therapy just for their own shoring up their own emotional, IQ, if you will, because the more you develop a solid sovereignty within yourself, and I don't mean ego sovereignty, I'm talking about heart centered sovereignty that comes from a place of compassionate empathy for yourself and others is one of the first things to start. And to the extent seeing a therapist, I know we're talking about spending some money, but it's going to pay dividends later on down the road. That's number one. Get a clear idea of who really is compatible with you. Like, really assess your lifestyle and say who would actually fit. By the way, Brent, most of the reason why midlife relationships fail, it's because couples don't know how to blend their lives together. They each are kind of set in their own ways. Women are set in their own ways. Men are set in their own ways. We have to learn to recognize that a relationship is a co-creative experience when you're in midlife. It's different in your 20s. Like when you met your wife, it was different because you guys were a blank sheet of paper. But if you were out in the dating marketplace today, and believe me, I can already tell you'd be a fish out of water, or a deer in the headlights to some degree. And I don't mean that disrespectful, by the
No,
way. I
it's
meant that with a
absolutely
bit of
true
tongue in
statement.
cheek. But having an idea of who would actually compatible with you by first really identifying, like, what's when I say core values, like what is something core about you that you need to know somebody else shares that value with you? And I'll give an example from my own playbook. Personal development, self help, spiritual work, and therapy is like so fundamental in my life that if someone isn't actively doing it on a daily basis, we would be completely opposite to one another. And that's not fair to say completely opposite, but I want someone who embraces that. That would be our common purpose and our common passion. You have to find that piece of common purpose, common passion. First, know it for yourself. Okay. And I don't mean skiing, 12 days a year. That's 12 out of 365 days. And I'm just picking a sport like that. Um, Having that sense. And then to the extent putting yourself out there, look at, I'm, to those that are religious, pray. Okay. Ask God for help. For those who are spiritual, ask God, universe, or spirit for help. You can ask for guidance from a spiritual perspective. That's one thing. To the extent putting yourself out there, you know, certainly cultivating relationships with friends, asking friends to, introduce you to people. I actually think still social media is still a great way because like of the few hundred people that are on my social media that are my friends, in other words, people I follow, they're people I believe I know most of them on my Facebook page, even though or at least I know a big percentage of it. I still think through social media is still a good way to connect with people because it's kind of a testing the waters way to meet somebody. Proximity makes a big difference, and let me explain. Proximity, meaning how close somebody is, creates continuity. Continuity builds trust. In other words, the more time you can physically be in each other's orbit, the more frequently you can be together, it builds more trust with another person. Because being dependent on our thumbs, by the way, Brent, we humans weren't designed to communicate with our thumbs. Thumbs were just
Yeah.
only for what time are you coming home from work kind of thing. Where are you lost? Here are the directions. That's what our thumbs are for. 80 to 90% of communication is nonverbal. It has everything to do outside of talking or seeing. Well, seeing is a part of it too. Um, but and so I don't want to eliminate online altogether. It's about being more strategic. It's about being more aware, like really understanding who would be compatible with you. But we still hyper focus on attraction, and that's going to yield us poor results.
Blending together two lives is difficult even when you're young.
Yeah.
You know, starting out, I think so. I was 21 and my wife was 19 when we got married,
Okay.
right? Uh,
Babies.
yeah, blending. Back in the day when that used to happen, uh, blending two lives that are still that new. Like at this point, we've been together longer than we'd lived without each other.
Mm.
And
Oh, interesting.
yeah, we've crossed that point in our marriage where we had been married longer than we actually lived apart before we met each other or got married.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, I get it. I get it.
and so, you know, but blending lives when you're that young and that blank is already complex. Like that's already one of the barriers in having a healthy marriage. Doing it later in life when you both are very established and you have your routines. And I know a couple that like there's 20 years difference in their age.
Okay.
And the reason it worked was he was very set in his life, but because he was set and comfortable in his life, and he lived a very simple life. He didn't want to do fancy things. He was very happy living his day. She fit right in because he was like, "No, I'm glad you have your life. I'm glad you have your things. I'm glad you and I just enjoy being with you and it works, right?" Their relationship
Yeah.
has gone on now 24 years or 23 years and it works for them. But it took a both very mature individuals who are like, I have my life and I'm comfortable with that and we like being together and we're cool. You can have your life, you can do the things you do.
Did
I don't
either one of them have children?
nope.
That's what throws the monkey wrench for most of people in midlife. As I said earlier, 75% of singles over 45 years old are divorced. That's anecdotal, but I think it's pretty close to
Right.
accurate. Um, of that, I would venture to say, and this is just me riffing off the top of my head, 75% of those people have children. And, the TV show Brady Bunch really gave us a diluted sense of what it's like to blend two lives together. I mean, talk about the fantasy, that
Right.
Carol Brady had Alice to cook, clean, and do everything else. She had it easy. And their biggest issue was six kids had to share one bathroom. Um, but blending lives is so complicated in midlife that we have to recognize that a big part of compatibility is that capacity to blend lives with another person, but also to be aligned with the other person on your core values. And I don't mean, trust and integrity as a value. I'm talking about what matters most to us. And by the way, and you may not be aware of this, or you may be, but in the last 6 years, political differences has been one of the
Right.
primary friction points in the dating process that didn't exist. Didn't exist 10 years ago, but now it's like prevalent to like, we almost have a tribalism way of approaching relationships because of that. Um, but understanding compatibility, like really understanding who would be a good fit for me, would be a question I'd ask myself. But that requires knowing who you are. And sadly, most humans operate on an unconscious level outside of the egoic way of viewing who we are.
It's one of the reasons I always ask at the beginning, who in your own words is, right? Because so many people don't have a clear understanding of who they are, or they haven't defined themselves.
Hey,
And
can I modify my answer?
yeah, yeah,
So I'm clearly aware that I am, on some level, I said a spiritual being have a human experience. That was the one aspect of it. But I'm a complex, dysfunctional human being who happens to be self aware, who's working on themselves, who's kind of aware of his insecurities, fears, his negative patterns, his limiting beliefs, his judgments to some degree, and how that affects my life, particularly in interpersonal relations where it creates friction. And I try to be self aware enough to own my shit, to own my blind spots. I miss the mark frequently, but I take ownership. I take ownership in my life when I genuinely hurt someone else's feelings or do something inconsiderate. I take ownership in my life. And 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 that's partly more than that answer I gave you before.
we're all a beautiful mess, but most people don't actually ever stop to try and put it together and say, "This is who I am." And so I
Yeah.
always like to see when I get a guest, like, okay, how does this person see themselves? How do they feel about themselves right off the bat, right? Because most of us don't actually stop and ask that question of ourselves,
Well, they usually answer it by what we do and not who we are.
right?
That's the particularly for men in particular, because men throughout history identify with their professional life as their identity. I mean, that's throughout history.
Hmm.
And so, I've gone through some gigantic, um, tragedies in my life. And I'm only using the word tragedy not from an overly dramatic perspective, but I've experienced some real loss and pain in my life over the years. One particular was the dismantling of my identity when I lost my high end corporate job. I got wiped out in the market crash of 2008, and I went through a divorce all within a span of 2 years. And my identity was obliterated to the point where I went to bed for 6 years wishing I didn't wake up. So I know what deep depression feels like. And, until you've been in the pit of despair and understand what that truly feels like, and then in my case, clawing my way out through, I'll be candid with you, Brent. I became a dating and relationship coach because I was addicted to online dating. I've had over 500 first dates in the last 20 years. I mean, I've done more than most men will do in 10 lifetimes. And and it's just through those experiences that I actually eventually helped women try to figure out what men are all about, and that's kind of evolved into my business, was through my addiction of online dating.
It's always interesting to see how people got where they are,
Yeah.
right? The journey never starts where you think it's going to start, right? It starts somewhere, and all of a sudden you look back several years later, and you're like, "Huh, didn't see that."
I'll share something interesting with you. So lately, men have been reaching out to me, young men in their mid, 30s, 40s, even 50s, And it's interesting because I'm thinking of one gentleman in particular, and it's more like life coaching. It's not even his relationship is a clusterfuck. I mean, like, dude, I'm like, do her the favor and break up with her. But they're in a trauma bond together. But you know what he wants? He just wants someone to talk about his feelings, and not a therapist, but I'm like a big brother or an uncle to,
Mhm.
from an emotional standpoint. And I said, well, why don't you talk to your friends like this? And they go, because my friends will use this shit against me, and you're helping me push past it from a wise point of view. This was him saying this, I'm like, he goes, you help me look at my stuff from a wise point of view because I know you've been in the trenches, Jonathan. And I've crawled through glass on an emotional level. And we men are thirsty to open up on a heart-centered level. We want to feel safe. I had a 67-year-old gentleman at my home recently. We did a workshop together, and he's like, I've never opened up to another man the way I did you. And I'm not saying this from, I mean, he was talking about from an emotional level. He goes, I've never been safe to open up. And I'm like, I don't know what my gift is. I just happen to be good at this kind of thing. And he poured more out in 8 hours than he did in the 67 years he's been on this planet. And that guy fucking went through hell in his childhood. I mean, some real shit. So, we all have a story. We all have a hero's journey. If we are able to actually look at it from the from the audience member of the what's going on the screen. We all have a hero's journey, and we should, and we should celebrate all of the little victories that we've had in life on an emotional level. And most guys don't even have a forum to do that in, you know. And I just want to encourage guys in particular. There's a lot of bad press out there, but it's the exception, not the rule. It's just the exception gets a lot more noise. For you guys listening, I know you're a good person. You're not, you don't genuinely want to hurt anyone or anything like that. But I'm going to promise you this: if you do the inner work over 1 year, and I don't mean listening to a Jordan Peterson podcast. I mean, actually, not that there's anything wrong with listening to podcasts. I mean, there are great podcasts out there, but really do the inner work. Look at your childhood, maybe seek a therapist, work with a counselor, work with a coach for 1 year. It will change your life in ways you can't even imagine.
Jonathan, what's next? What's the next big project for you?
Thank you for asking, and thank you for allowing me to be. I'm in my preacher mode, so thank you for letting
You're
me
fine.
preach a little bit. And I'm grateful to talk to guys too. Actually, the next evolution is I'm tweaking. I'm trying to pivot to I don't know if it's life coaching. It's like dating a relationship starts the conversation, but I'm not a traditional coach. I mean, I'm my own Tony Robbins in a way, and I don't know how to label it or brand it or advertise for it. But I think I'm a really good person to shoot the shit with. Okay, now and what I mean by that is I'm a good person to hold space for someone and to help cultivate out of them what's inside of them. I don't know how to brand that or how to articulate that. And I've been working with ChatGPT, but even then, it's still like that's the evolution. And I want to work with more men. The other thing is, and I didn't say this earlier, I'm into psychedelic therapy. So I do a shitload of that. I believe that we can access portals of our consciousness in ways that psychedelics can open places that just standard meditation doesn't do. And so I'm a big proponent of that. I know I'm, talking underground for a second, but I'm hoping someday it becomes mainstream. But I'm a big proponent that when we start to work on ourselves, we just happen to have happier lives.
I would agree entirely. Where's the best place for people to connect with you?
I'm sure you're going to post a link somewhere.
Oh
Ideally,
yeah,
you can take my name, Jonathan Aslay, put it in Google. My YouTube channel will come up. I mean, I produce 5 videos a week on my channel. I'm like I love being on camera and just riffing like this.
Ah,
Then there's my website, but just go to YouTube and start following me. If I resonate with you, then send a message to my support, my whatever inbox through my website, and you can schedule a call with me, and we could see if working with a coach is right for you.
are you ready to know what a proper term is for a collective group of unicorns?
Yeah, what is it?
You guessed a glitter. The answer is it's a blessing,
It's a blessing. Got it.
right?
That's number C, I think, or it's letter C. Excuse
Yeah, it
me.
was C, right? I know everybody actually gives a crap right now. Out of everything we talked about, I know everybody was holding out for that
Are
one.
we talking unicorns, women, or are we talking unicorns, the actual,
Actual unicorns, like
mythical? Okay, it's a blessing. Interesting.
I don't know,
I
like
don't know why glitter.
if
It's
unicorn
funny.
women might be a blessing.
I was remembering the Shazam second movie, and there's a scene where unicorns came out, and there was a rainbow at one point, and I was like, that's what made me think of glitter was rainbow.
Yeah, the ones
That's
in
what went
Shazam
through my
were a
head.
little scary.
Huh?
The unicorns in Shazam were a little scary. I was like, I
Yeah,
like
those were
that
scary, but there was a moment where she took out her
Skittles.
Skittles, and that's what made me think of rainbow, and that they yeah, no, those unicorns were a little bit more like monster corns, but,
Yeah, I like that version better.
yeah.
But yeah, the ad placement on that one, like I was sitting watching that with my best friend, and they threw out the Skittles. I was like, "You're kidding me, right? How much does Skittles pay for that?"
But
Ad
I don't know, it was the rainbow, it was that scene that popped in my
Oh
head,
yeah,
not
yeah,
the animal itself, but that's the scene when you asked me that, and I thought of glitter.
that totally makes sense. Jonathan, if our audience heard nothing else today, what is the last thing you want to leave them with?
Hey, you know what? I'm going to leave it with this I'm going to talk about love for a second. And this is in the realm of dating and relationships, but I mean, I think we all want to feel loved, and love can feel scary. And so I just want, love is a risk. Okay. It is a risk to put your heart out there to make this effort, but it's still the best game in town. So love is a risk. It's the best game in town.
Guys, for myself and Jonathan, thanks for hanging out with us today. Be better tomorrow because what you do today. We'll see you on the next one. The Driven to Thrive broadcast: purpose, growth, and lasting impact for men. Helping men go from living to thriving, purpose-filled, intentional lives. Affiliate disclaimer. MyPillow, like any other source, cycles promos. Because of the extended life cycle of a podcast, the immediate promotion that you heard mentioned in this episode may no longer be in effect when you hear it, because you could be hearing this 5 years from when I recorded it. However, as long as MyPillow is a sponsor of the Driven to Thrive broadcast, our show, our promo code THRIVE is always good for up to 80% off your order and free shipping on orders over $75. No matter what you hear in this episode, as far as the current promo, Thrive is always good as long as MyPillow is a sponsor of the show for up to 80% off your order and free shipping over $75.